Greetings, friends and grafters. Hail and well met. This build is part of 3 projects that tie together the tales of the Blighthouse, the Summoner, the first ship to travel to the ether, and Umbra, a goddess of earth and fire, daughter of Thea, and guardian of Stormkill. At the center of our stories is a rare otherworldly mineral called mordantium. It is raw magic concentrated into a physical form. In appearance, mordantium is a soft clay-like substance, overall bluish in color, and flecked with silver. And now, it's time for a tale. So get a drink, hot or cold, sit back, relax, and let me tell you a story. We begin in the city of Stormkill, home to a brilliant mage named Symaxius II, known as Sam to her close friends and family. She is a tall, agile woman with red hair and a strong jawline. She is very unlike the other soft, self-absorbed, overly intellectual mages of her city. She loves the sea and spends most of her days swimming, rock climbing, or exploring the jungle-covered volcanic island she calls home. Every year, Symaxius II petitions the Noble Council of Mystics to grant her the title of Archmage, and every year she is denied. They would tell her that she had done nothing of greatness worthy of the title. They would tell her she spends too much time surfing. Mages don't surf, they sniffed. Determined to achieve a feat so great they would have no choice but to bestow her the title, she set her mind to solving one of the great mysteries of Stormkill. That of the disappearance of one of the most revered mages in the history of the city, her great-grandfather, Symaxius I, also known as Symaxius the Great. He left behind an unfinished mage tower on a barren, wind-eroded cliff overlooking the city. It was a constant reminder of the loss of one of the greatest minds of the discipline of magic. If she could discover his fate and the purpose of the unfinished tower, the noble circle would have no choice but to grant her the respected title that was rightfully hers. Shortly after the disappearance of Symaxius the Great, an attempt to enter the tower was made by a group of ambitious young adepts whose names are lost to history. Overconfident and careless, the adepts set off several of the hundreds of traps that were waiting for anyone foolish enough to enter uninvited. The lethal enchantments and vicious snares set throughout the winding, twisting hallways and staircases made sure the secrets of Symaxius the Great stayed secret. The exploration ended in disaster. The bodies would not be recovered for decades. Another attempt was made many years later with the same result. The deadly tower was shunned and left abandoned thereafter. It became known as the Blighthouse to the superstitious locals. In the following years, the coastal storms became more frequent and more violent, at times battering the city with high winds, rain, and thunder for days on end. Rumors spread that it was the ghost of Symaxius the Great, still protecting his secrets, or the revenants of the adepts, still trapped in the tower and taking vengeance on the living by attracting the storms. It was Symaxius II, Mage of Stormkill, great-granddaughter of Symaxius the Great, who would finally unravel the mysteries of the Blighthouse. Taking care to not repeat the same mistakes of the previous expeditions, she slowly began probing the lower part of the tower room by room. She discovered the method behind the madness of her great-grandfather's defenses. The traps could be avoided or disarmed with simple gestures and words, and clues were there for those who took the time to observe. Over the weeks of discovering and disarming the magical traps, Sam developed a grudging respect for the lethal designs of her great-grandfather's defenses. Traps were set off by simple things, like failing to wipe one's shoes on a dingy rug, followed by the rug expanding and strangling the offender. In one room, the title of a painting was the password for avoiding death. Another room required that it be entered by walking in backwards. Failure to do so would fill the room with lightning, immolating whatever was inside. Entering without knocking would set off a transmutation spell that turned the recipient into a fish, who then suffocated for lack of water. There were 3 small piles of fish bones on the floor in this chamber, all that was left of the unfortunate adepts from previous explorations. Sam collected the bones and gave them a proper burial. Not all of the traps were magical in nature. In one of the highest rooms of the tower, a simple trapped door opened to a chute that dropped the victim onto the cliffs far below. Another door opened into an illusory room. When the victim entered, the illusion disappeared and the poor soul plunged to their death. Some of the spells were designed to disorient trespassers, so they endlessly went in circles or up and down spiral staircases that led nowhere. Sam found one skeleton on a stairway. Since there was no mention of who it was in the records, she surmised this was an actual thief who had climbed the outer walls to get in and then became hopelessly lost and starved to death. Sam had a distinct advantage in detecting the traps. She could see the glowing outlines of hidden runes and sigils that were worked into the intricate designs of the walls, woodwork, and carpeting of the tower decor. Her talent for seeing magic auras had been honed during the long days she spent surfing the waves. She used her mage sight to observe the naturally occurring spirals and eddies of magic that churned the seas to catch the perfect wave. Even with her ability to detect magic by sight, it took months of slow progress to disarm the wards and traps in the maze of rooms and corridors. The long grind of mapping and disarming paid off when she finally entered the dusty, cluttered workshop in the highest room of the tower. Charts and diagrams were stacked in disorganized piles on long tables, stained with teacup circles and burn marks. Sam studied the weird diagrams and formulas scrawled on the dusty parchments for days before finally understanding what they described. Symaxius the Great had been investigating the creation of a portal. His papers explained the basic principles of opening a doorway into a realm he called the Ethereum. At the very top of the Blighthouse, looking out to sea, Sam saw the last piece of her great-grandfather's puzzle. With her mage sight, she was able to clearly see the vortex of energy that had been forming off the coast of Stormkill. It was this vortex that had been fueling the increasingly violent storms over the years. Her great-grandfather had miscalculated the intricacies of creating a stable gateway to the ether, and that error caused the portal to be malformed. It had been growing steadily over the years. The storms were being driven by the ether leaking into the world through the broken portal. In the lantern room was a complex apparatus that great-grandfather Symaxius had been building. A brass and wood contraption of gears and glass towered over Sam. The machine was a set of brass wheels of descending size, nested one inside the other. The finely made counter-rotating wheels were inscribed with powerful runes. In the center of the intricate machine was a huge lens etched with a massive sigil. Sam was uncertain what would happen when she powered it up, but she was damn sure going to find out, even if it killed her. She activated the lantern by speaking the names of the runes and touching them in the proper order, sending a bit of her own power into each one. They glowed with mystical light, illuminating the lantern room. Once all the runes were ignited, Sam spun the enormous brass wheels using a hand crank made for the purpose. After a few dozen rotations, the spinning runes had charged the lens, and a blazing light illuminated the cliffs and sea around the tower, throwing light into the faraway streets of Stormkill. Stunned city folk looked up in awe and dread as the light of the Blighthouse lit up the night sky as bright as day. In the moments after, lightning bolts shot out of the top of the tower, singeing the air. The burst of lightning was followed by a sound like every horn in the world sounding at once. In the city, windows rattled, doors shook, and people ran for cover. From her position high above the sea over Stormkill, Sam saw the smoldering edges of the portal splitting open even wider. Through the gap, Sam saw a glittering city floating in a sea of iridescent clouds. She lost track of time as she stared in awe at gleaming towers and flying ships. The city was studded with delicate buildings of prismatic glass, trimmed with gold. When the energy of the array was spent, the portal collapsed to a tiny glow. The runes on the generator went dark, cooling slowly. She wondered if anyone would believe her when she reported that there was a city in the ether, just on the other side of the darkness of night. Over several days, Sam studied more closely the plans that Symaxius I had left behind. There were construction plans for a ship that would sail the oceans of Thea and also navigate in the Ethereum. She had never heard of anything like it. Some of the last entries in his journal revealed that a rich source of mordantium could be found on the other side of the portal, if he could make it wide enough and keep it open. In fact, the ether might actually be made of the stuff, but he needed to go there to be sure. He needed to go through the portal to discover the facts. Mordantium was a substance infused with raw magical energy, and it was extremely rare on Thea. It had many applications for the art and science of magic. It could increase the power and duration of spells, make permanent enchantments on objects, and even temporarily increase the abilities of mages when ingested. Ink made from it could be used to make permanent tattoos that held magic power. Sam knew at that moment what had happened to him. He entered the ether through the unstable portal. He was somewhere on the other side, perhaps still alive. Mages were known to live exceptionally long lives through their spellcraft. It seemed she had solved the mystery of his disappearance. She thought she might even be able to find him. What a discovery that would be, she thought. She would build the ship he had designed and go in search of her great-grandfather. She would construct the summoner and sail the ethereal seas in search of him. End of part 2.